Next to Eric, and the person who will complete our panel is Marvin Zonas. He's Professor Emeritus of Business at Chicago Booth. Since 1987, Marvin's been teaching much sought-after and oversubscribed courses on international political economy and leadership. He has written extensively on globalization, emerging markets, Middle Eastern politics, the oil industry, Russia, and U.S. foreign policy. He's a leading authority on the Middle East and has spent the last 40 years studying the volatile mix of Islam, terrorism, and the Middle East. He's also a tireless ambassador for the University of Chicago. Last year, by the way, you may recall that he correctly predicted the outcome of the U.S. presidential elections, and in so doing, correctly predicted that Hyde Park would become the recognized center of the universe.
Ladies and gentlemen, the question I'd like to address is what will be going up in 2009 besides unemployment? For sure, what's going to be going up in 2009 will be sales of anti-anxiety and anti-depression pills. 2009 will be one hell of a year for psychotropic drugs. But in addition to that, other things will be going up in 2009, including the new psychology of the global crisis and the ensuing political instability. I suggest to you that three psychological variables will come to be extraordinarily important in driving the world economy and the world's politics in the coming year. And those three variables are humiliation, anxiety, and mistrust. Humiliation, if you look in the dictionary, is defined as a feeling of being disrespected, diminished, lessened, embarrassed. Anxiety, of course, is the fear, the pervasive fear of ill effects to be forthcoming. And mistrust is an inability to have an assured reliance on the character, strength, ability, or behavior of other people. All three of those things are at work now. We are all humiliated because of the precipitous decline in our wealth. The people around the world are equally as diminished. And what always follows from a sense of humiliation is anger. And I would suggest to you that the level of humiliation is so deep in many countries that what will follow will be rage. When you combine that with mistrust, mistrust of the government by the people, mistrust of the people by the government, you have a situation which will drive political instability in many, many countries. Now, the countries which have democratic political systems are fortunate because this rage can be expressed through the political process, as did the American people on November 4th when they, quote unquote, threw the bums out, which is what Americans always do when they are angry. The countries, however, which lack those mechanisms will see more violent forms of political instability. Now, in addition to the collapse of stock markets, we, of course, have seen the collapse in commodity prices. And the IMF estimates that there are close to 60 countries in the world that depend overwhelmingly on the export of commodities for their economic well-being. These 60 countries do not include the oil exporting countries. That's another entire category. So to give you a sense of what's happened to commodity prices recently, this is the percentage in the decline of commodity prices from their recent highs. Wheat is now down 60%, soybeans are down 47%, copper is down 61%, rubber is down 45%, cobalt is down 75%, cotton is down 51%, iron ore is down 71%. And of course, oil, as we know, has plummeted and is now down 72% from its high of $147. So the point is that these countries, which depend on commodity exports, will experience political turmoil. Regrettably, of the 60 countries, 21 of them are in Africa, a region of the world which can ill afford political instability, but will nonetheless see their political instability rise in this year, and other countries which include, in Asia, which will see turmoil include Australia, Indonesia, Bangladesh, the Philippines, and Thailand. In the Middle East, Turkey, Syria, and Morocco will be very hard hit, and in the Western Hemisphere, Canada, Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Ecuador, Mexico, and Peru will be battered. Terrorism. We know one thing, which is that after Mumbai, terrorism is alive and well in the world. This will be true whether Osama bin Laden is alive or dead. This will be true whether or not President Obama sends 10,000 more troops to Afghanistan or 20,000 more troops to Afghanistan. Afghanistan, like Iraq, has never been the center of global terrorism. It is and remains in Pakistan that we have to worry about the future of terrorism, which the government of Pakistan will not be able to control in the coming year. Dubai, the world's tallest building, the Dubai Tower, will be completed in September 2009. When small countries build tall towers, it is a sure sign that grandiosity has taken hold, and grandiosity always precedes a fall, so it will be in Dubai. In 2009, Iran will have a presidential election on June 12th. That guarantees that the United States will make no overtures to Iran before then, for fear that those overtures will be perceived by the Iranians as a vindication of President Ahmadinejad's policies. So we will be waiting until after the election in hopes that his miserable shepherding of the Iranian economy will result in his defeat, which I would predict right now. Regrettably, however, the defeat of this outspoken Iranian president will not result in diminishing Iran's commitment to developing nuclear weapons, because that policy comes out of the supreme leader and not out of the president of Iran. In fact, Iran's military is working deeply on the militarization of nuclear materials into a bomb. Iran has just started a space program, the purpose of which is to provide a cover for the development of intercontinental ballistic missiles, which can deliver that bomb when Iran eventually, and not in the near future, is successful in producing a weapon. Iraq. The Iraqis have approved the status of forces agreement ardently negotiated between the United States and Prime Minister al-Maliki of Iraq. The Prime Minister has proved that he is the new Iraqi strongman, that he faced down the United States, that he forced a timetable on President Bush that looks remarkably like what President Obama-elect was claiming he would do if he were elected president. And now the question is whether or not the improved security in Iraq, and it has been staggeringly improved. For example, the number of deaths, the number of murders per month in Baghdad has fallen from 4,000 per month at the end of 2006 to, quote, only 500 per month at the beginning of 2009, the end of this year. The question is whether Maliki can include the Sunnis into the distribution of power within the central Iraqi government. And that yet remains to be seen, and until then we will not know about the future of stability in Iraq. China. According to Chinese astrology, 2009 will be the year of the ox. I see 2009 as the year of unrest. I believe that China's plummeting exports, its real estate collapse, its bankruptcies in businesses will lead to massive increases in unemployment and massive amounts of strikes, riots, and demonstrations, both against companies, local provincial officials, and the central government. The result, in my view, will not be a response by the Chinese similar to what will be the 20th anniversary of Tiananmen Square in June of 2009, but instead of repression, my prediction is that the Chinese regime will open up, be more tolerant of opposition, and begin a crucial movement to the political change necessary for China to become a remarkable country. In India, new elections will be held in 2009, and Prime Minister Singh has to make a major and robust confrontation with Pakistan if he is going to win the 2009 elections. As it is, I predict the Congress and the Prime Minister will lose. The BJP will return to power. The BJP is a Hindu nationalist government that will prevent India from adopting policies that will increase the role of its 150 million Muslims in Indian politics, nor will it contribute to their increase in economic well-being. The result of that will be more longer-term instability in South Asia. A word about Great Britain, which along with Ireland and Spain, as you saw in Eric's initial slides, are the countries in Western Europe even worse off than the United States. Household debt in the UK reached 165% of personal income. House prices increased far greater than they did in the United States because of mortgages which were available at 120% of the house selling value. And the size of the government of Great Britain has increased from 37% of the GDP of Great Britain to 46% of the GDP of Great Britain in the years that Labour has been in power recently. And so what will happen, I predict, in 2009 is that Gordon Brown will call a snap election, Gordon Brown will lose the election, and there will be a return to power by the Conservatives. In the Western Hemisphere, a word about Mexico, which will be the hardest hit country in the Western Hemisphere. Its oil output has been falling as its price has collapsed, and Mexico will become a net importer of oil within the next 5 years. In addition to that, of course, the remittances from Mexicans working in the United States has plunged after having increased 5 times between 1997 and 2006 to $24 billion. The remittances are now absolutely collapsing. And in 2009, the economic hardships connected with the extraordinary drug corruption will threaten the central power of the Mexican state. I am always amazed that Americans seem to be utterly mindless about the fact that the significant political instability in its neighbor to the south is caused in the end by the extraordinary American demand for illegal drugs. And what I call for, as Milton Friedman did for so many years, is the legalization of drugs in the United States. In the United States itself, we will see brand USA vastly enhanced by the presidency of Barack Obama. We will see brand Chicago enhanced by its winning the site for the 2016 Olympics. And we will see brand Chicago booth vastly enhanced as Dean Snyder gets to employ the vast new resources so generously provided by David Booth. However, our European allies will be sorely disappointed by the presidency of Barack Obama because they expect to get a kind of cookie-pushing patsy who's going to get on his knees and apologize for all of America's past sins in their eyes. And what they're going to find instead is that we have one of the most hard-headed realists committed to increasing America's relative power vis-a-vis the rest of the world. He will make his first trip to Europe in April of 2009 to attend the 60th anniversary celebrations of NATO, and at that time he will beat up on the Europeans. He will beat up on the Europeans to strengthen their economies, to lower their interest rates, to commit more troops to Afghanistan, to play a greater global role in unity against Russian aggressiveness in its former satellites, and also to try to make Europe more economically independent of Russian energy supplies. And I see, therefore, the president as taking a very hard line in international relations. Finally, I believe we'll see massive negative domestic social effects because of the economic collapse. Crime will rise in the United States, especially because cities facing budgetary crises will cut down on police forces. Teenage pregnancies will rise. The welfare system in the United States will be severely stressed. Americans will delay major life decisions because of their lack of personal savings and because of the economic hardships, which means marriages and household formation will be postponed. It means new births will be postponed as well, and that will contribute over time to the slowness with which we emerge from the recession. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, my death watch. Many world leaders are pushing the longevity tables. As usual, several of them will not survive the year 2009. For one, number one on my list, Fidel Castro. After handing power to his brother Raul in 2006, after his intestinal surgery, the 82-year-old's death, it seems to me, will occur in 2009 and unleash new political turmoil with Raul, his brother, with the military, with the exiles in the United States. Kim Jong-il suffered a second cerebral hemorrhage in October of 2008 that has left him paralyzed on his left side and has affected his speech. Another fatal stroke is likely to follow in 2009. Robert Mugabe, the 85-year-old despised destroyer of his country, will leave power only through death, and that horizontal state will come to him in 2009. Finally, Tan Shui is the chair of the Burmese military junta. At 75 years old, he has been in power for 16 years, and to capture the nature of the Burmese regime under his leadership, it recently sentenced a citizen of that country to 45 years in prison for organizing a private relief effort to help the victims of the May 2008 disastrous typhoon, dead in 2009. Well, my conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, is that there's good news and bad news for 2009. Regrettably, most of the news is bad. But the good news is that the United States will start the year with a new president and a new administration committed to rectifying the catastrophes of the Bush presidency. The ROW, the rest of the world, with the exception of Islamic militants, are ready and able to help Obama overcome the challenges. The bad news is that those challenges are staggering, both in the United States and everywhere else in the world. The global economic decline will drive humiliation, anxiety, and mistrust. The resulting rage will generate political instability in many countries, reducing their chances for an economic recovery. The lucky countries, those with democratic political systems, have institutionalized means to express the rage and direct it into electoral channels that do not threaten the stability of the system. Democracy, as Winston Churchill famously said, is the worst form of government except for all those others that have been tried. Thank you.